Hey there, and welcome. This is the scariest time of year for most of us. And I do not mean Halloween, I mean the upcoming holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. There is so much pressure to make this time of year magical and memorable and just perfect. And along with that pressure comes a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of fear. There are so many moving parts, so many things to manage at this time of year that it is only natural to struggle, right? And so I wanted to jump on YouTube and just do some videos on the most common holiday fears and how to address them, or the most stressful things in the holidays and how to deal with them. I also offer a deep dive set of courses called De-Stress Your Holidays about all of the facets of the holidays that people find stressful. Everything from expectations and tradition to budgeting and finance to health management to relationships. So if you are needing a little bit more support, consider checking those out. You can get them individually or purchase a bundle and save some money and get some extra perks. Without further ado, though, let's dive right in to holiday relationship stress. It is a very, very normal thing to have stress about your relationships on the holidays. There's a few different things that can play into this. One is alignment issues with your partner if you are partnered. Two is that a lot of times you see people you don't typically see around the holidays. Three is that relationship management at the holidays can be incredibly overstimulating, especially if you are neurodiverse, as I am. I struggle a lot with the holidays because of this. And four is that we don't all come from the healthiest environments, right? So navigating some of the landmines of the holidays can be really difficult for that reason as well. It can feel incredibly taxing. So I want to talk about exactly how we're going to work on some of these issues, things that we can do to prepare ourselves better and to show up really authentically and to come out of the holidays without a giant pile of regrets that we need to unpack and work through. So, the first thing I want to talk about is actually your partner. Now, if you're not partnered, you can stay tuned in or you can just fast forward right through this place. But I think it's really important to talk about this because the holidays can create a lot of conflict inside our own homes. And when we're dealing with holiday stress in our other relationships, it is really important that that is mitigated as much as possible. We want to have as much peace at home as we can. We want home to be our safe haven, right? So when we go to those holiday parties or those holiday get togethers, we know that we can come home, take that deep breath, feel supported, feel like we can be comfortable and just in ourselves. And that can be really difficult if we're misaligned from our partner about holiday stuff, right? And so, what do I mean by that? I want to start this by just saying that it is far more important to be partnered and to be a team than it is to be right. The holidays tend to require a lot of compromise in partnerships. We each come from our own families of origin with our own sets of traditions and ideas about how the holidays should be. It's very important to get very clear about what is most important to you, what is most important to your partner, and to whenever possible, come together in a way that is unifying and that is consistent and that feels good for both of you. And that might mean a little bit of sacrifice or a little compromise, or it might even mean that you get creative and maybe you alternate. This Christmas, you do your family traditions. Next Christmas, you do his. That is always an option. So I just want to encourage you to have the conversations about what each of you needs at the holidays. What's most important to you? How will you feel most supported? And what does the other person need to know? One of the spaces I really feel we need to open up the conversation more, and I've seen this in my own marriage as well, is that even if you love your in laws, their ways of celebrating the holidays might be uncomfortable. it might be challenging. And it's really helpful if your partner knows that there are certain things about holiday celebrations with your family that are hard, right? That can make a big difference and allow us to support in different ways or allow us to reassure. For example, I spent many, many years in my husband's family feeling like I was doing Christmas wrong when I showed up at their Christmas Eve event. It's much more structured than anything my family does. There are a lot more moving parts, and there's a lot more emphasis on creating a perfect event, right? And so I very much felt like there was some pressure to show up in a certain way, to say the right things, to do the right things. That can be very complicated for me because I already struggle with some social anxiety. I already struggle with social awareness, right? So I felt like there was some kind of script that I had not been given about how to navigate the holidays in general, which, by the way, conversations about the perfect holiday event start months and months in advance. And so that just added to the pressure I felt about the holidays. Now, I love my in laws' holiday events. I love being with my in laws, but this felt like a lot of pressure to me because it was unfamiliar. Having the ability to talk to my husband, having the open dialogue where I could actually say, I feel awkward. I feel like I'm messing this up. I feel like I'm not going to do it right and everybody's going to be mad at me, right? Having the ability to talk through that with him enabled me to feel more comfortable. And he was able to provide some insight and to kind of bridge some of those gaps for me. And in addition to that, he's able to show up better for me in the actual event, right? Because he knows that certain things can be more challenging for me. We can come together and create unity and harmony and structure about what we need and want as well for our family. With my family, he, I'm sure you won't be surprised, always struggled with how casual our Christmas was. And to him, it feels really chaotic sometimes. And so, him being able to talk about that and us being able to strategize ways that we can just check in and feel a little bit more grounded was really helpful. So, creating some harmony with your spouse and some open communication about how you'll navigate these holiday events is really, really important. I also think it's important to leave space for your partner to potentially not attend some events. It is okay if you don't both attend everything. It is okay if you choose to not attend each other's family events, or if one of you chooses that or the other. That needs to be okay too. Sometimes the differences or the environments are untenable in certain ways for one person or the other. And it is important that we make space for that. Remembering that when it comes to holiday relationships, the relationships that are most important to honor are the relationship with you and the relationship with the people in your personal immediate family. And what I mean by that is your partner, your children, and yourself. And so, anytime that external relationships from extended family, even if they're your family of origin or work or friends or anything else, is starting to interfere with what's most important for you and your immediate family, you have permission that you give yourself that you can step back, that you can skip it, that you can create boundaries here, right? But in the relationship with your partner, please get clear about how much you'll spend, what types of gifts you're comfortable with, what events you're comfortable going to, how to blend your traditions. These things are not going to happen on their own. I'm just telling you. And rather than allowing resentment or frustration to fester, rather than having one or the other of you feel overwhelmed or overburdened, it's very important to have these conversations. And by the way, that includes having the conversation about who's doing what for the holidays. It matters a lot. The next thing I'm going to talk about is actually dealing with extended family stuff. right? Some of us don't come from the healthiest of families, and some of us know that the holidays can be really loaded. Sometimes they're fine, sometimes not so much. It can be incredibly, incredibly helpful to have check ins with your partner or someone else where you can say things like, hey, if you see me seeming to be cornered by Uncle Bob in any conversation, can you come and retrieve me? Because I'm going to do my best to get out of it, but I do not want to talk about politics and I do not want to listen to that. And sometimes it can be hard to extract yourself from those conversations. Having that is really, really helpful. In addition, I always recommend having two, yes, two code words. One code word is for we need to actually have an aside or I need a moment alone with you. The second code word is for I need to get out of here as soon as possible. Okay, typically speaking, in our families, my husband and I usually don't use the second code word except with our own families. Meaning, I'm more likely to use that word if I'm at my family's house. He's more likely to use it at his family's house to help us extract easier. That is because sometimes things go down that just aren't okay. That's just the reality. They're not okay. You are trying to uphold your boundaries, but it's not working. There's conflict or tension, and you can feel it. You know that a fight's going to break out, and you don't want to be there for it. There are things that can happen during family holidays as their pressure is high for everyone, tension is high, and there's a whole new group of people a lot of times there, and that can cause discomfort that is untenable to the point that you need to leave. In addition, it's really important and helpful to make sure that you and your partner have talked about your boundaries and communicated them, preferably to your own families first. Meaning, for many, many years, my husband and I, with our children, wanted to leave his family's party earlier. They have a pretty long party. We have 5 children. Sometimes, like when we first got married, when we were first together, the party would go on until sometimes 10, 11 o'clock at night or later. With children and a blended family, all of our kids live with us. We have a unique situation where we always have the kids Christmas Eve to Christmas Day, mid afternoon, they go with their mom, right? This has always been the way we do it because his family celebrates Christmas on Christmas Eve. Because of that, my family never gets to see our whole family on Christmas. I never get to have my whole family together on Christmas. This is something that we discussed early on, and we felt it was very important to keep the traditions that had been there the same. So, this is how we've always done Christmas. But that also means we need to get home and get our kids in bed so that they are not exhausted when they wake up on Christmas morning, in part because we don't have all day. Y'all, we have other things going on Christmas that we need to also navigate. And so that means we need to set a boundary about when we leave. Now, I know boundary experts are going to comment like crazy about what I'm about to say, but y'all, you need to do what works best in your life. And what we found is that it worked best to set a boundary with a grace time on the back end. So, communicating, for example, to his parents, we need to leave at 9 when we need to leave at 9:30 so that we had a little cushion before we actually had to pull the trigger and leave was really helpful for us, especially with Christmas, okay? Because we didn't want to leave and be pulling the kids out when people were still opening gifts or when big things in the Christmas event were happening. And we can't control how other people manage their Christmas event, right? We can't get there and say, y'all, we need to open gifts now. It's not our Christmas event. But we can say we need to leave soon, right? Or remember, we are planning to leave at 9. Okay. And that way everyone kind of is on the same page. Now, mind you, we will leave. We will leave without things being done. We actually will because we have to. But it has not happened ever. It's never happened that we've had to leave because with the reminder and the boundary communicated, we are able to leave. Now, I have to say, I'm not the one who communicated this boundary to my husband's family. Whenever possible, it's best if you communicate to your own family what the boundary is when it's a family boundary, right? As a side note, The time that we leave was not my decision. My husband was beside himself the first year that this happened, and our 3-year-old got up in the morning, opened one gift, and went back to bed because she was so tired from the party the night before. He was beside himself, and he was like, "This will never happen again." So this was very helpful because he was the one who wanted the boundary. But even if I was the one who wanted the boundary, working through that and him presenting it to his family is actually the better way to go. They're more likely to receive it well from him. And that's the reality, despite how close I am with my in laws. So I always highly recommend that. However, it's also a really good idea for you to create your own personal boundaries. And you don't necessarily need to communicate those ahead of time. You can communicate them on the spot. There is no rule that boundaries have to be heads up, right? Like, heads up, I have a boundary about this. If you can communicate the boundary in advance, that can be helpful. It's not necessary, though. If there's something that you know and you can predict and you know that you can just put out there as a general thing, especially if you are hosting the holiday, that is always helpful, but you don't have to do it. For example, a few years back, I was hosting Thanksgiving. I always host Thanksgiving. And I told everyone who was coming to my Thanksgiving dinner, no politics. We were in an election year. It was hotly debated. Depending on when you're watching this video, you probably know why I would say this. And I have people who have all different political affiliations in my family, right? So in my family, I do not, and in my husband's family, I don't want political debates at my Thanksgiving table. That's just the way I feel about it. I'm not interested in that on the holidays. So I communicated that to everyone who came. Everyone understood it. As soon as everyone got in the house, though, you can bet someone made a comment about politics. And as soon as it happened, I said, please remember, we're not doing political conversations. There will be no political talk. I stopped it halfway through the sentence. I interrupted the sentence and said, we are not talking about politics on Thanksgiving. That's it. It is very helpful to have that already in place. And then if you shut it down, you feel like you knew, you were forewarned. It is what it is. But even if the person is not forewarned, even if you're not the one hosting, it is completely reasonable for you to have boundaries about yourself or your family and to communicate them on the spot. Simply saying things like, I will correct my own children. No, actually, we don't do that. She doesn't have to hug you before we leave. Okay, I've had to say that, by the way. Or things like, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. If you are concerned about being more confrontational than you like, you can simply change the subject. That is fine too. You can simply leave the conversation. You can say, "Oh, I think that mom might need help in the kitchen," and just walk away. Don't wait for an approval. It's important that you have some awareness that you are allowed to have boundaries with your family and with your partner's family. You're allowed to have boundaries about your children, and it does not matter if other people agree. Now, if the boundary that you have communicated is with somebody in your partner's family, it's possible that they might need to back you up, meaning saying, I correct my own children might require backup. This has happened in both my family and in my husband's family on different occasions, where my husband, for example, has said to someone in my family, I don't appreciate that. I handle that with my kids. Like I handle correcting my own kids. Thank you. And the person in my family has continued or has felt away. And I have said, no, we are not okay with that. He needs support from me. He needs me to bring the point home that I am on his side and this is not going to happen, right? No one is going to undermine my husband, right? No one is going to ignore my partner's boundaries with me. I'm not going to allow that, and vice versa. This has also happened with his family, where I have said, the specific incident is I said, they don't have to hug you. And it was met with some resistance. But I want a hug and don't you love me? And my partner came into the picture and said, we don't do that. And they are not going to hug you. This is done. Like, drop it. And so that made it a lot easier because then it doesn't seem like it's just me. Now, here's the tricky part. Okay. Y'all, listen, you do you, but I'm going to tell you, as a person who's been married for 22 years with a blended family and extremely complicated family relationships, I think it's very, very important to realize that providing that backup is important, even if you don't agree in the moment. Being a team with my husband, with my partner, is more important. Okay. We can always go back. He can always apologize. I can always apologize. But setting the precedent for either of our families that it is okay to step between the two of us is problematic. And that is the agreement we have in our marriage. So, in that moment, even if my husband wanted our child to hug the person in his family, and I was saying, we don't do that, we don't make our children hug people, even if this is the first time it had ever come up, and he did not know that this was something that was important to me. He didn't agree. He felt like the kids should have to hug everybody before they leave. Let's say he thought that, right? Then he would still say, no, this isn't going to happen. And the reason why is because what he's saying in that moment is, it's important that you respect my wife's wishes. Okay. I'm telling you, my family of origin, that it is important that you respect the wishes of my wife. Right. Now, later he can have a conversation with me. And he did. And say, I don't understand why this was a big deal. I don't understand why this is a thing. Okay. And I explained it to him and he respected that explanation. Whether he agreed or not, I'm not even certain, but he knew it was really important to me and he respected the explanation. And he was like, okay, well, that's just how we're going to do it. And that's the way it is. Right. And that's okay. And he might have been like, I really strongly don't agree. And I really find this problematic. For example, if one of our children had said or done something that one of us considered really rude or disrespectful or harmful to someone else, this may have been a more drawn out conversation in that moment. And then it may have been a circle back to be able to say, you know what, I really didn't see everything that was happening in that situation, or I did, but I've thought about it and I have to tell you, I was wrong and I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay if you correct my child because they're pulling your cat's tail. And in that moment that I said, I don't want you correcting my child, I just want you to know I'm really sorry about that. I did not realize that that's what they had done. Obviously, if something else, if it's dangerous, if it's destructive, if it's harmful, and I don't see it, I definitely want you to correct that. As a general rule, though, we correct our own children, right? You can always circle back with the other person in your family to clarify what happened there, but having your partner's back matters. And the last thing I'm going to say, and I want all of you to receive this, okay? So buckle up for this one. Ready? You don't have to go ever. Okay. You don't have to go ever. You can choose to not attend family events. You don't even have to explain why. You can just say, I'm not coming. I'm not coming this year. That's it. Thank you for the invite. I won't be there. You don't even have to say why. Okay. Here are a myriad of reasons if you happen to be from a family that requires a why. It's easier for me to say why than it is for me to not say why, because in my family, over explaining is our culture. Okay. So if I don't say why, I know it will go on and on and on. And so for me, I'm like, path of least resistance is to just say why. Ready? I don't feel well. I am tired. I haven't been feeling well. We have other things on our schedule that cannot be moved, right? We have a sick child. I've even said, I'm not going to be able to make it because I have been really stressed lately and I just need some downtime. I actually host Thanksgiving and have canceled it at the beginning of November, second week in November. I think I did it one year because I was like, I am way too overwhelmed and stressed and I'm not feeling well and I can't do it this year, right? It's okay to just say no. Hard stop. It's okay to just leave because you're not comfortable with what's going on. Hard stop. It's okay to call an Uber and leave and let your partner stay. What would you do if you were sick, right? And by the way, you can pretend to be sick. You are not obligated to show up at family events or to show up in relationships in ways that you don't want to, that you don't feel safe, or that you are not comfortable with. Okay? And honoring the fact that the holidays are also for you, not for you to just serve everybody else. And doing what feels best and right for you on the holidays in this season of your life or in this particular moment is also important. It is okay to lay at home on Christmas Day and binge watch Hallmark Christmas movies or binge watch Die Hard because you just can't this year or you just don't want to. So, in your relationships, wherever you can, be preemptive about creating harmony with your partner, getting clarity about what matters most to both of you, and creating a plan. Set boundaries with the other people in your life. Have code words to give you the opportunity to reconnect with your partner or to leave if you need to. And always remember that it is always okay to say no. In the rest of this series, I'm going to be talking about budget and money. I'm going to also talk about food and health. And I'm going to include in the food and health unit addressing dietary issues or dietary preferences in holiday parties and how to navigate that with consideration for your relationships and various different approaches to it. I am dairy and gluten-free. I have 2 vegan daughters. This has presented itself as a definite issue for our family. So I will definitely share how we navigate those things as well. Remember to like and subscribe so you never miss our content. I'm always here providing tips on how to make your life easier, how to improve your mindset, and how to reduce your stress level and accomplish your goals. Because remember, you are amazing. You matter, and you deserve to live the life you've been dreaming about. Bye, everyone.